3, 2. Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, Train Man, and Grizzly Peak. The Phase 3 mountain that we lost a lot of progress on. We need to get back to working on this thing. But I'm not entirely sure where to go. I know that I was building that little area in the back. But you know what? I guess I'm gonna do this. There. I'm going to take this area, make it slightly higher, attach a rail line, like so, put at least one spline point in the rail line, move the rail line. Do that. I moved something back here, didn't I? Thought I moved something. Okay, did I move one of these by accident? Doesn't look like it. Okay, never mind. Because I thought I grabbed something and moved it. Oh, I did. That's better. Wait a minute. My bad terraining sense was tingling. So last week proved that no matter what, we still have no idea how much time we have left in a given episode. So I have no idea. I'm just going to save often, and maybe we'll have more than 20 minutes this time. Get rid of these now. We're done with these. Alright, so what we've got to do is we've got to lay down the law. And start just laying stuff out from here. Yeah, I was actually thinking of having a piece come out. No, you... Oh my god, how did that even happen? Oh, I understand how it would happen now. Piece come out more this way. Except without the really strange terraining issues. Or the railing issues, I guess. And moving this out here... Whoa, whoa, whoa. Close enough. We're gonna have to make those guys like each other. Oh, crud. I got right into this. That was something I needed to do. I just got home. It's rather late on a Thursday night because tomorrow is Valentine's Day, and I'm not going to spend my time video making on Valentine's Day. You know, would be kind of dumb. So, of course, I'm making this a day early, as I have with several others. But this today, I have some very unusual constraints which I accidentally ignored. And I kept thinking about them, then didn't think about them, then thought about them, then didn't think about them. It's one of those things where you go, oh, I have to do that, and then you totally forget. So we're just going to throw this here. Oh, right! There was something I have to talk to you guys about, and this time it isn't... Actually, I'm sorry. Just kidding. It's still a pipe dream. But it's not the same one, it's a different one. And it's it's my ideas for, frankly, I really don't know what to call it, but, essentially the most realistic train simulator slash railroad tycoon thing. I don't know, it was something, it kind of stems from my, this is an idea that I don't think I ever told you guys about, but I had an idea a long time ago. I can still remember how, I had this idea, which was something closer to a very realistic, MMO shooter, where you'd make your character and then you'd level up that character, but if you died, you'd have to start the character again. A character again. You could remake your character however you wanted. And I don't know why, but the idea of permadeath is always kind of cool to me, which is why I like DayZ and stuff like that, or FTL. I haven't really played any or too many roguelikes. I know FTL is a roguelike, but it's basically the extent of that genre that I know well. So it's just, you know, I mean, and a lot of roguelikes out there are very, very kind of unusual. I mean, I guess the only one I can picture in my head is, what's the one with the kid in the dungeon? It's really effed up. That's all I remember about it. It's just weird. If I remember it, I'll let you guys know. But you guys, if you know what I'm talking about, you probably already know what I'm talking about. It's kind of cartoony. There's like giant flies and stuff. I don't know the story behind it at all. It's a very strange game. But yeah, it's a good roguelike, as far as I know. Now, once again, this is going to be a Phase 3 mountain, so we're going to have the kind of lower slopes here, in order to make this thing seem less kind of randomly jutting out from the ground. We save. Overwrite. Yes. Sync. Sync. Alright. You know, I really shouldn't wait too long between saying sync, because then it just bothers my future self when I'm trying to edit the video. Makes me sit there for even longer while I, for goodness sake. Let me just throw a random one out here to use as a guideline. Throw one down in the middle. Now, of course, a lot of this is going to be overwritten when I do the lower areas, so only the top part has to really look good. And when you do it like I just did, you kind of know where to meet in the middle. When you're working from one side, it can make things awkward when you're trying to make things blend. Tips and tricks on mountain building from Train Man. The striations. I always like to highlight the striations anyways. Just because they're kind of something that uniquely comes from this process. I like to shove them in people's faces like, look at my striations! Click, click. Where did I place that? That's what whoa! How did I just do that? I want to find out what this is attached to. What the heck? You've got to be kidding me. Okay. Undo that. Let's go back over there. Did it do it again? You've got to be kidding me. Hold shift so that your track does not connect to other tracks. Track building tips with train. Train train. Oh, right, so back to what I was talking about. Every time I want to do one of these things, I end up being incredibly scatterbrained throughout the entire episode, or at least I feel that way. Durango to Chama, I was the same way. At least I felt like I was being completely scatterbrained, whether or not I actually was. And watching the video, I wasn't nearly as bad as I thought I was. But it was still not great. Oh, for goodness sake. Let's just fix the whole top of this mountain here. Alright, that's not bad. Let's finish this bit up here. By the way, if at any point it looks like I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing, it's probably because I'm not. But on the other hand, it might just be because I'm doing a plan which is far too advanced for mortal minds, and instead that's why I can't understand it. Yeah, that's a good excuse. That's a good excuse. I'll use that one later. Right, so, the train simulator. Okay, the hardest part of this thing, if you want to hear me talk more about the military thing, because that's more of a solidified idea in my head, I would know how that one works. Because it's kind of, if you guys ever played, not Ace Combat, Combat Flight Simulator, that's more like it. That's what I'm talking about. You love, like, if you went, and I'm not talking about the multiplayer, because the multiplayer I never even got to play. I'm talking about the campaign. Because in the campaign you could, you did your battles and whatever. I didn't play too much of the campaign either, I'll be honest. You did your battles and whatever, but if you died in any of those battles, your campaign was over. Like, that was it. I don't remember what it was like in terms of save games and stuff. I remember I never really made one because I never made it far enough in the campaign to warrant it. Back then, all I had to play on was a laptop, and the laptop was really, really crap. I'm sure if I put the disc in here, it'd actually be a game worth recording, I guess. But if I wanted to fly a plane in a game, I'd go to War Thunder, because that's a great game. Shout out to War Thunder. So the hardest part in terms of computing for this train game would be generation of the world, because the world we're talking about is not a 4x8 sheet of plywood to put buildings on. It's not a bunch of segmented tabletops or a boxed off area where you industries spawn. No, no. Sink. Sink. When I say a world, because this is a pipe dream and I can be as ambitious as I want, when I say a world, I mean a world. As in a globe. With, cities are, well, with realistic terrain features, canyons, mountains, rivers, oceans, forests, ecosystems, everything, the whole 9 yards, like a new Earth. And of course you could generate Earth if you wanted to, but that's boring. Why would you want to do that? But yeah. We're working on, you get a planet. And now every region has its own kind of specifics on different engines and whatever. I didn't even think of the engines until now. You could have people designing the engines, like in the game. Okay, well that's more to the multiplayer side of things. I'll get to that when I get to it. When I get to talking about it. Talking about the world here. In the world, you'd have industries based around actual kind of production centers, like in mountains, you'd find mines. Down in, and of course you'd have limitless numbers of cargo to transport. In sandy regions, you'd find kind of sand pits or whatever you find in a desert, whatever resources you find in a desert. So like nothing. You'd have wood cuttings at forests, like actual logging camps at forests. Salt mines, and all sorts of other random industries. I'm not sure how many location-based industries there are. Of course, farms and vineyards in fertile areas. Your grain production in fertile areas. Of course, all your crops would be exactly where you'd expect them to be. It's essentially like real life. You have your fisheries at the oceans. You have your ski resorts up in the mountains. You have your passenger stations in towns. Of course, there aren't any passenger stations yet. There just are passengers without stations. And of course, you can start your own industries as well if you want to do that. But then you have to micromanage those, or you have to send someone to do it. Now, in my head, it's a very unusual mix of locomotion and TRS. Oh no, I did it again, didn't I? Oh wait, no, delete that. It's a very unusual mix of locomotion and TRS, where the world is completely malleable and it's not boxy. It's more like this, where you have actual shapes, but instead of just driving the trains, you're actually building the routes. And when you build the routes, you have to take into account everything that the trains would need. So in that respect, it's more like Railroad Tycoon, because you have your water stations. Water stations have to be near water, of course. Petrol stations have to be filled. Coaling towers have to get coal from somewhere, and etc. But you have all the facilities you'd need. And of course, the game proceeds in more or less real time, which is, of course, agonizing. But that means, of course, it would be slow at first. And then, I'm not sure what kind of protocol there would be to speed up the game. I don't know how a convention like that would work. It'd have to be sort of like KSP, Kerbal Space Program, where you just have the notches of speeding up time. And of course, things can go wrong when you're not paying attention to them and speeding up time. I don't know. I like how they do their thing, except physics is not engaged when you're time warping. We've got to work a lot back here. Let's save, though. No, not... Oh, you doofus. Okay, so to start out, let's say you're in some mountains. You decide, you pick a random spot on Earth to spawn, and you survey the area. Now, of course, there will be actual surveying going on. Of course, you don't, at this point, you're not, you don't have a character where you have to pay attention to their food and water while you're out surveying. For example's sake, let's say you get in a plane and you're going over the area and you're just looking at the area, and let's say there's a mountain range, and up in the mountains there might be some coal, there might be some gold lower in the foothills, and let's say, oh right, oil is in deserts. Oil in the sands to the east, on the other side of the mountain range. And on the west side of the mountain range, you have a port town where there are ships docked that want fuel, some giant cargo ships that need the that are ready to take the coal to steel mills or what have you. And of course the town and the banks would take gold. In that scenario, but of course, so the gold would be easiest to get because it's at the foothills of the mountains, and you only have a small stretch of let's say forested land with a couple of rivers leading to the town. First thing you have to do, you have to make a depot at the town. So you could design your own structure, which is something that came into my mind. Actually, instead of using a generic palette, but although you'd have a generic palette, you would be forced to design a structure. You can use this generic palette, or you can design your own freight depot, I guess. Design this freight depot, put it in a good location, where people would come and pick up these resources. And then you start work on laying your track. Now you send surveyors out, and I guess surveyors would be like random bots. You send the surveyors out to check to see where the gold is most plentiful, and they do some, I don't know, ground penetrating radar scans or soil samples or cores. I mean, of course, these days you don't really know if there's gold somewhere. You just have to go and mine and find it. But for the sake of, well, for the sake of the game, I guess you'd quasi know. You wouldn't know entirely, but it would say it'd be best to go here. But of course, people would be flocking to set up their mines. If you said there are gold in those hills, you let that information loose in the town, and NPCs go and flock and start mining and panning and what have you. Now, I'm really going deep into this. Of course, it would be a lot more shallow to a person playing. So, short version is, you go and look at these mountains and have some people check if there's gold. And if there is, then you can choose to release that information to the townspeople, or you can choose to just make a mine yourself, and that's it. Hold on, let me save again. Sync. Of course, when word gets out that you're shipping in gold from these hills, people are going to go out there anyways. But you probably wouldn't have any competing railroads unless you're in a multiplayer situation. I wouldn't know. Of course, the entire game is kind of an MMO, so I'll get to that part later, where people have individual jobs. Something else that made me think of this was kind of EVE Online. I've been tempted to get into that. I was wondering if any of you had feedback regarding. Although I don't really have the cash to do that. However, back to the train game. In said train game, you are, let's say, you don't release, or no, let's say you do release the information to the townspeople. In this situation, they start flocking there, let's say, by four-wheel drive truck. Well, you know, you go out there in a truck. They go there in their four-wheel drive trucks, and they start mining, or they start panning for gold. Because of course they don't have equipment. They're just a bunch of people. They're just a bunch of hicks in trucks. So they start panning for gold. Now, you could start a mine anyways, although you wouldn't make as much money as you would if you just started a mine right off the bat. You could start a mine anyways and start mining the gold and transporting it, or you could transport the people to the ore front and transport their ore back for a cut of their profits. Of course, this wouldn't be making nearly as much money. However, you would probably gain, I guess, good reputation. You'd get good standing for helping these people capitalize on what they've earned, or what they've found. And of course, it depends on how you go through that. If you charge them a huge sum to transport their gold, they're just going to do it themselves, and your reputation will go down. Blah blah blah. You know what? Let's take a backtrack here. That was a good spot for an example of reputation, which I kind of just thought about on a whim. But if you started a mine yourself, you invest the capital to start a mine yourself. That might be a little bit difficult, although you could always say to investors, look, there's gold in those hills, I promise you, and come back with a sample, send someone to get a sample, an NPC to get a sample, and then you get some investors on your project. In that case, you get some capital and you start. I guess you could ship stuff out there by truck, but that would cost a bunch of money more than is worth it. You could start shipping things out or in by truck just to get a little bit of money and dropping them off at the freight depot, unless you've got enough investment that you can start working on the rail line straight away. Of course, you will have surveyed this line. In order to know if you can work on the rail line straight away, you have to know how much it's going to cost. So you have to go into, I guess, surveyor mode. Would be a sort. There's really no defined modes. It's just everything happens. And you go into this mode, and you find, and you start plotting a course through these forests. And of course there are trees, of course, because it's a forest, duh. There are trees, there are boulders that you have to clear out of the way. There are inclines, declines, rolling hills, rivers. Now you get to a river, you have to navigate around the hills. You can make cuts, you can make embankments, and this, that, and the other. Anything that essentially anything that a railroad could do, you could do. And then you get to a river. Again, with the building side of things, because it's just the kind of thing that I like. You could take from a SimCity-esque palette of bridges to use for your generic bridge, or you could design one yourself, one that could be either cheaper or more extravagant looking. I guess an extravagant looking bridge wouldn't help your reputation if it wasn't on a passenger line. So, yeah. You can build your bridge, you can build it for, like, toughness, but it can look like crap, or whatever. Or you just pick a bridge and you bridge that gap. So, essentially, that's the track building part is where it's more like locomotion, because you have to worry about exactly what you're putting where. So you plan out this whole route, and then if you can afford it, you send people to work on it. And now the people to work on it would not be players; they'd be NPCs as well. And then work would get done over time, and you can speed up. As the owner of the railroad, you could speed up the server, I guess. The host of the server could speed up time. I don't know. That's the multiplayer bit is where I'm getting a little bit vague. But so you plot your course all the way to the foothills. You bridge these rivers. You route around steeper hills. Cut down these forests, clear them, make embankments where needed. You know, what have you, and of course anything a railroad would do. I want this to be, or I would want this to be very realistic, and that would be the fun in it, basically, just because it's like, alright, I have to do all this. And a lot of games like that, you don't, a lot of super realistic games you don't have too much fun in, but then look at, like, Kerbal Space Program, which, of course, there's a point of cartoony fun in there. But nonetheless, there's all the trials and tribulations of a real rocket program there. And with the updates to career mode that are supposed to be rolling out, it's going to be even more like it. Let's save again. Check my watch. Sync. But then you get to the end and you set up your mind. You either design it or pick from a template of you know, generic models with generic track sets, like 2 tracks, 1 track, 3 tracks, roll in, roll out, you know, whatever. But now, oh no, I did it again. But now you have your 2 ends of the railway. But now you have to figure out what kind of engines you want. And then you figure out what kind of engines you want, and then you figure out, you know, of course, the cost of the locomotives, and then exactly what they're going to need, what kind of facilities they'll need, and then you get those facilities, you build them in, and then this whole time, every time you build something into your system, you have to build the tracks to it, and you have to design the trackways to it, and where the signals are, and you know, all of the turnouts and grades and every piece of track, basically, you need to know. You need to figure out where it is, and where it should be, and put it there. Or, well, not put it there yourself, but say, put this here. Of course, the more multiplayer aspect of the game would be you'd have people doing that for you. You'd be playing and saying, okay, well, I want to build a line from X to Y, and then you'd send a couple of people that are surveyors to look out at the line and see where the best place would be. A couple of people that are bridge builders to design you the best bridges. A couple people that are, you know, people that know their locomotive stuff to get you the best locomotives, and people that design yards to design your yards. Of course, you could do that all on your own. It would be perfectly possible. Essentially, the idea would be it would be perfectly possible to be done in a single player game. But if you wanted to join a multiplayer server, you could do it. You could do it that way. That looks good, I'll be honest. And then, of course, you buy your ore cars as well. You park them in the yard, and then, you know, you could either crew your staff with NPC engineers, or you could get actual people to drive the trains. That's the hook. That's the hook that I was thinking of. You're in this gigantic world. You're essentially doing what I am doing right now, except with a budget and everything. You're essentially playing Locomotion, but actual people are driving the trains. And of course, every car is kept track of, every engine and its direction. That's where it's more like a simulator. Now, where it's more like this. Trains won't ever be clipping through one another. You won't ever have trains that turn around on their own. Trains that'll continue if they don't have fuel in them. They'll just run out, and you'll have to send something out there to get them. And of course, you'd be losing money that whole time. You know, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that this would be super realistic, but the fun would be in the realism. And you'd have mountains to dig tunnels through, and of course they'd have different kinds of rock, and you'd need different kinds of machinery to dig through said rock. Tunnel collapses would be an issue. Of course, if people died, it would lower your reputation. And if you lowered your reputation, investors would be less wanting to invest. Your shareholders might back out. Your passengers would be less likely to ride. People would be less likely to use you for cargo, especially in a multiplayer, multi-railroad scenario where you and your friend are each controlling different railroads, and you're both controlling all the aspects, or you each have people working for you, doing all these different things, and you're fighting over this resource. And one screw up, like and of course there could be natural disasters like washouts, floods, forest fires, destroy wooden bridges, and washouts destroy embankments, and you have all the hell that you can go through on a railroad, and that just adds to the randomness and the saying, all right, we've got this screwed over. How do I overcome this challenge? And that plays into something even bigger, like people these days, and I'm not saying anything about you guys, of course. I'm just making a statement that people don't like to work. And, of course, that's a duh statement. But my generation in particular, no offense, guys, I'm just being serious and honest. We don't like to work. We like to get everything for free. But if more games were out there where you really had to work, for stuff, and it was a realistic scenario, that would get people to go, you know what, I don't mind working. Working is a challenge. I'll overcome it. And of course, that's sort of the meta thought behind the whole thing, but that's not what I was thinking when I came up with it. When I came up with it, it was like, oh, I wanna build a railroad and then drive a train on it, but I want it to be all real. I want it to be all realistic. Of course, there'd be no DCC controls, you know, anything like that. And okay, this is the one thing that was getting me about locomotion, and still gets me. Not in TRS, but in locomotion. The places have realistic outputs. Right? Right. They have realistic outputs per day that passes. Of course, locomotion time is incredibly condensed, and that always, I don't know, it always confuses me. And in this game, you'd be able to pick your era, and so you'd have a certain amount of technology, certain technologies at your disposal, and then blah, blah, blah. I mean, I want some feedback on this, because it sounds really cool, and I'm no programmer, but if I ever got into video gaming, or the creation of video games, I'd be working on that, and it's something I'm going to stuff in the back of my mind from here on out, along with the Durango to Chama. Speaking of Durango to Chama, before I end this off, I'd like to apologize to everyone that noticed me saying Antonio and, you know, knew it was Antonito. I got corrected about that while standing at the Crumbres and Toltec booth in the Big E. So that was that. But yeah, Grizzly Peak is pretty much done. Good job, us. And now we're going to move on up, or we're going to move on over here, whichever one I feel like doing next. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next week. Trainman out.